speak to Jess Gill. She's director of Reasoned UK. And when it comes to social media, Jess, this social media is huge. You could easily argue that we got a black president in America, Barack Obama. His rise to that role easily could argue is because of social media. So what's going on when it comes to Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak? What are you seeing here in terms of what they're doing when it comes to trying to reach those members via social media?
Well, as normal, the left are very dominant on social media, and you see with Liz Truss and Rishi, they're both getting memed on. They're both getting made fun of. Like, you know that clip of Rishi Sunak saying, "Oh, I have friends who are working class." Actually, no, I don't.
Oh, yes.
And that one of Liz Truss going, you know, cheese and all that stuff. It's just funny, and that's because they're not very entertaining candidates. With Boris Johnson, he knew what he was saying was entertaining. But with Liz and Rishi, they're both basically Keir Starmer in a blue tie.
That's so funny you say that, Jess, because when I see Rishi, he was talking today, and I got feels of Ed Miliband, as in when he was Labour leader. And that's not a good feel, as far as I'm concerned. Ed, now, I think I want to say he's Shadow Energy Secretary. Ed, in that capacity, since no longer being Labour leader, he is so entertaining, really engaging. When he's in that dispatch box, he's a completely different person as to what he was. Here we go. Thank you very much, Ted. Shadow Secretary of State for Climate Change and Net Zero. Here we go. He used to be Shadow Energy Secretary, though. But yes, I get a lot of stiffness from both candidates, actually. However, Liz does say that Rishi is more of a polished presenter. Is that helping Mr. Sunak at all?
I think we've come to an era where politicians do have to be entertainers as well. And it would be completely different as well if they brought along conviction with that. They don't have to be a joker. They just have to have conviction. You know, there's always this talk of being like Margaret Thatcher. But it's not just policy. It's her personality. She stood for something properly. It's not just some tax cuts or this idea of reducing the size of the state. You need radical reform, which may sound ironic coming from the Conservative Party. Well, the Conservatives are fed up of the current Blairite, Cameronite consensus. You know, what did Boris Johnson do with his 8-seat majority? What Conservative policies, other than Brexit, has he put forward? And the membership are fed up of it.
Really? Do you not think he was successful when it came to the pandemic, in the rolling out of the vaccine? In fact, the inventing of the developing of the vaccine, I want to say 5 was developed because Boris Johnson just threw money at the powers that be, at those at the centre of it, to make sure we can live the lives we're living now. No more lockdowns, no more restrictions.
I mean, I think the vaccine rollout was amazing. But when it comes to the lockdown response, we restricted people's freedoms. That was absolutely outrageous, in my opinion. And it's also caused this economic damage that we're suffering now. The cost of living crisis is because of the lockdown and our COVID response.
War in Ukraine as well. And actually, speaking of the war in Ukraine, Boris Johnson praised quite heavily for the handling of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we do need to stand up with Ukraine. But as well, what about what's happening with the British people? You know, when I talk about, like, Blairism, you know, the Equalities Act, which has caused all these diversity inclusion officers, the Communications Act, which has crippled our freedom of speech. They're putting forward an online safety bill, which, again, is crippling freedom of speech. These aren't Conservative policies. What about the Gender Recognition Act, which is posing a threat to women's-only spaces? They have the powers to do something, and they've not done it. And I don't hear anything from Liz or Rishi about that.
Really? So it's none of the above for you, it sounds like?
No, and I think, again, out of the three of Boris, Liz and Rishi, I'd pick Boris just because personality. And at least...
Really?
I think so, yeah, because I do like what Liz is saying about the free markets, and I do think that's important. But again, it's easy to say you're for the free markets when you're appealing to Conservative voters. But when it comes to those on the left, you know, they're not going to have that. When the rest of the country, I'd say we're quite a left-wing country, so economically, unfortunately. And I think these candidates, Liz and Rishi, they'll backtrack. Well, Rishi's already backtracked, and I think he does have free market principles. I just think because he's had time in cabinet, because it's hard to stand up for what you believe in, he's cowed with that. And I think Liz Truss doesn't have the backbone as well.
So when it comes to the social media then, their social media campaigns, who do you think might be winning?
I think Rishi Sunak is very stale with his campaign. I think Liz Truss is a bit better. Again, I think when it comes to campaigning, it's not just what themselves are putting out there. It's their backing, a grassroots backing. And Kemi Badenoch, for example, had a great grassroots backing. She got 10k followers on a grassroots account, which people loved her. And again, I think the fact that there's not been that much grassroots backing, and which social media, it democratizes what people have to say. It shows what people have to say, and there's not really that much hype for either candidate.